Hello everyone, my name is Super Destiny Enthusiast, and I will be your Dungeon Master. This is a solo flawless Duality dungeon guide for all classes. I have a few things I want to talk about before I get into the guide itself, but if you want to skip directly to the guide, skip to the timestamp below. Alright, if you're still here, you need to know that this dungeon is a completely different ballgame when you're trying to solo it, especially the Vault and Caiatl encounters. Not everyone is going to be able to solo flawless this dungeon easy. This is an actual challenge. I solo flawless all the other dungeons pretty regularly even now, and none of them are this brutal and this unforgiving towards solo players. This is a challenge. As of the recording of this video as well, there were currently a lot of bugs, some of which can just screw you over, and some of which will just outright insta-kill you for no reason whatsoever. This will take time and it will take a lot of practice, but if you have the resilience, quite literally, to go through and do it, you can get it done with enough practice. That's all I have to say, let's get right into the guide. Let's start off with the stuff I recommend you use. For this dungeon, I'm going to right off the bat heavily recommend you play as a Solar Titan. It makes this dungeon so much easier while you're soloing it, it almost makes it look like a joke. To my Titan mains, I have a specific build that you should check out. It is less than a minute long and it makes this dungeon kind of laughable. And if videos aren't really your thing, then you can check out the build in the description below on another Reddit post that I made. Now, for my Warlocks, I am going to recommend Karnstein's or Starfire Protocol with either Well or Devour. Those are going to be the best classes I personally found when running this on my Warlock, so I'm going to recommend those to you. And for my Hunters, I'm going to recommend Assassin's Cowl paired with Knock 'em Down because I found that combo to be extremely underused and very powerful. Or you can use Graviton Forfeit or Omni Oculus for the infinite invisibility. Also, 100 Resilience is almost, if not an absolute mandatory must-have for this dungeon, so I highly recommend you run in with 100 Resilience. Now, with all that out of the way, let's talk about mechanics. First up are the bells. These bells are the main part or mechanic throughout the entire dungeon. The way they work is that when you shoot one enough times, you will be teleported into the Nightmare Dimension. Throughout the entire dungeon, you will be going back and forth between the Normal Dimension and the Nightmare Dimension. Now, to get back to the Normal Dimension, you must be inside the circle that surrounds the Nightmare Bell. This is so you can be safely teleported back to the Normal Dimension. If you shoot the bell and activate it while you aren't in that circle, it will kill you. Now, that's all you need to know about the bells throughout the entire part and process of the dungeon, so I will be moving on directly to the first encounter and the first boss, Galhran. Alright, for the first encounter, let's talk mechanics. To start the encounter, you must shoot a bell to be teleported into the Nightmare Dimension. In this dimension, there will be 4 rooms. 2 of these rooms will contain a group of dogs and a scion. You will need to kill the scion so it can drop an essence, which you will need to pick up. Once you pick up the essence, you will need to take it back to the normal dimension. I'll get to why you need to do that in a moment, but additionally, I want to cover all the other things in the Nightmare Dimension. In the Nightmare Dimension, there will be 2 Nightmare Bell Keepers. They will keep the bells on lockdown, preventing you from leaving, so you must kill them in order to leave the Nightmare Dimension. Every time you enter the Nightmare Dimension, there will always be 2 Bell Keepers, so every time you go in and out, you must kill them. There will also be a timed debuff called Nightmare Collapsing. If it reaches 0 on its timer, you will die. You can extend the timer by picking up the essence, which will give you an additional 10 to 11 seconds. Now, let's get back to the essence. Once you go back to the normal dimension, there will be 4 plates. They will be called Chalice, Warbeast, Sun, and Axes. You must deposit the corresponding essence at its designated place. Basically, deposit the Sun essence on the Sun plate and the Chalice essence on the Chalice plate, you get the idea. Once you deposit the essence, a door will open up with a group of dogs and a Colossus. Kill them and go inside of that room. Now, additionally, there will also be bell keepers in the normal dimension, so make sure you kill them before you deposit the essence at its corresponding plate so you can shoot the bell, because you will need to go inside of that room, whichever room you deposited the essence, and shoot the bell from inside that room to go back to the nightmare dimension. This is important because you need to be in that room to fight the visions of Galhran in the nightmare dimension. There will be 6 visions of Galhran per room, and in total you will need to kill 2 rooms worth, so 12 visions of Galhran, to start the DPS phase so you can damage the boss. Galhran will also be an immune nightmare boss chasing after you, so just ignore him and stay away from him as much as you can and you should be fine. Alright, that is a lot of mechanics and gibberish for one person to solo, so here's what I recommend you do. I will sum it down. Go to the nightmare dimension, grab one of the essences from a room after you kill a scion. Go kill the bell keepers, then leave the nightmare dimension. In the normal dimension, kill the bell keepers, then deposit the essence. Wait for the door to open, clear out the ads, shoot the bell while you're inside of that room, go back to the nightmare dimension, kill the visions of Galhran, leave that room, find the other scion, grab the other essence, kill the bell keepers, leave the nightmare dimension. Kill the bell keepers in the normal dimension, deposit the second essence, wait for the door to open, kill the ads, shoot the bell while inside of that room, kill the visions of Galhran, kill the bell keepers, and then finally DPS Galhran until you have about 12 to 10 seconds left on your timer, then leave the nightmare dimension. Rinse and repeat all of this until the boss is dead. Now, for DPS, I am going to recommend Lament, as it does a lot of DPS and it heals you, and I find it to be the most safest option out of all the DPS weapons that you could probably use for this dungeon. It can be a little finicky, but I think it gets the job done perfectly fine. For dealing with the bell keepers, Titans, you can literally one-shot them with any hammer that is at Roaring Flames times 3 and be fine. Hunters and Warlocks, I recommend you use Heritage or some sort of slug shotguns, so you can one-shot or two-shot them with relative ease. As for your primary, I'm going to recommend any submachine gun for ad clear, or if you are running a Titan, once again, I'm going to recommend the battle rifle with blunt execution rounds, because since you are throwing your hammer so often, you might as well take use of it, as blunt execution rounds can pretty much one-shot everything in this dungeon. That is pretty much it for the entire first encounter. The only other things that I'm going to mention is that you should watch out for the fire packs that the bell keepers drop, as they can explode at any given moment and pretty much insta-kill you without a hesitation. So if you have the opportunity to destroy the fire packs, or if you have the time to, make sure you do, and do it from a safe distance so you don't blow yourself up. Hunters and Warlocks, the best piece of advice that I can give you is to go aggressive. Don't play defense, try and play aggressive. I found that to be a much better strategy than just trying to sit back and play defensive. So with that said, that is all I have to say for the first encounter, so let's move on to the Crypt encounter, or the navigation encounter. For the Crypt encounter, there isn't much going on. You will need to activate 2 switches and then drop down a slide. This is mainly just jumping around, nothing too special going on here. Now, to avoid dying by physics when you're going down the slide, sword swipe while you are going down to slow yourself. This will prevent you from being flung into oblivion by physics. Once you reach the next room after going down the slide, just kill all of the ads and proceed to the long jump. I recommend you sword swipe to move yourself forward and then use your boost to make the rest of the jump, as I found that to be the easiest way to make this long jump. Once you make the jump, go down this tunnel and you will arrive at the statue part of this encounter. For the statue encounter, all you need to do is turn the statues until they all point their swords or axes or whatever at the bell. To turn these statues, you will have to go to the nightmare dimension and activate a switch on each one of the statues. Activating the switch will turn them. There isn't much going on here, just turn the statues enough times to open the door to proceed to the next encounter. That is all you need to do. The next encounter is the vault encounter. Similar to the very first encounter, you will need to go around and gather essences and then deposit them to open the vault's door. To gather the essences, you will need to enter the nightmare dimension. There will be 4 sections, 1 section for each essence. You can find out where each specific essence will be located by looking at the podium wall things. They will pretty much tell you where you need to go when you enter the Nightmare Dimension. To get the essence to actually spawn in, you will need to clear out the ads in that section to spawn in a standard bearer. When you kill the standard bearer, it will drop the essence, which you can then pick up. You will then need to travel back to the bell to teleport yourself back to the normal dimension. The bell in the Nightmare Dimension will also be on lockdown due to the bell keepers, so you must kill them in order to ring the bell to leave. Additionally, in the normal dimension, there will be immune nightmare bosses. There will be 3 of them that spawn throughout the encounter, and the only way you will be able to damage them and kill them is by depositing 2 essences. You will need to kill all 3 of these bosses, and in total deposit 6 essences to finish this encounter. Basically, every time you deposit 2 of the essences, you will need to kill a boss. The easiest way I found to do this solo was to slap on an eager edge sword to help me travel easier while in the Nightmare Dimension to gather the essences. Since you are doing this solo, I recommend that you grab only 1 of the essences while in the Nightmare Dimension. If you feel you can grab both, then do so. However, I found it better to play it safe, especially in that encounter, than to risk it all just to grab another essence to make it go faster. For dealing with the ads in the normal dimension, I would recommend you use Wither Horde or Agar Scepter, pretty much anything that will kill a lot of grouped up ads. Shadebinder for Warlocks is very strong here in this specific encounter, so I would recommend Shadebinder just for this encounter specifically for you Warlocks. The best advice I can give to you is don't rush. You have a decent amount of time throughout this encounter to do all that is required. Also, I recommend an anti-barrier pulse rifle to help deal with the phalanxes more efficiently. If you have blunt execution rounds, for you Titans, I'm looking directly at you, you can one-shot the phalanxes with blunt execution rounds and anti-barrier rounds, so that is a very good way of dealing with them if you're having trouble with them. This encounter is just a lot of moving around, so take your time and rinse and repeat the mechanics. Just play your life and everything should be fine. Other than that, that is all I have to say for this encounter, so I will be moving on to the final encounter. Alright, for Caiatl, like the previous encounters, the mechanics of this encounter revolve around essences and bells. In this encounter, there are 3 bells located around the arena. Additionally, there are 4 plates where you will need to deposit the essences, but I'll get to that in a moment. In this encounter, you will need to travel back and forth between the normal dimension and the nightmare dimension. You will need to kill standard bearers in the nightmare dimension to pick up essences to then bring back to the normal dimension, just like the previous encounters. You will need to deposit these essences at these plates. There are 2 towers on each side, 2 on the left and 2 on the right. In the normal dimension, you will be able to see the symbols for each essence by each tower. That is how you will be able to tell which one of the towers you will need to go to in the Nightmare Dimension. Additionally, every time you enter the Nightmare Dimension, you will need to kill Bell Keepers once again in order to ring the bell to leave the Nightmare Dimension. You will also have the Nightmare Collapsing debuff once again, so be wary of that as well. Now, back to the essences. Once you deposit 4 of them, you will then prime the Massive Bell, aka the Bell of Conquest. You will then need to shoot out the chains to actually ring the bell, and once you do ring the bell, you will be transferred to the Nightmare Dimension. This will start the DPS part of the encounter. For the DPS part of the encounter, there will be 3 bells, 1 on the left, 1 in the middle, and 1 on the right. Caiatl will run to one of these bells. If she gets there before you can stun her, the DPS phase will immediately end. Now, to actually stun Caiatl, you will need to shoot the bell that she is running to. Now, additionally, there will be bell keepers preventing you from ringing any of the bells, so you will need to kill them while Caiatl is running to the bell you were trying to get to. This can be a problem because if she gets to the bell before you kill the bell keepers, she will just immediately leave, so the bell keepers are more of a priority than Caiatl herself is for most of this encounter. Once you kill the bell keepers, you can then shoot the bell, which will then stun Caiatl and prevent Caiatl from leaving the Nightmare Dimension by using that bell. While she is stunned, you will have about 10 to 12 seconds to DPS her before she decides to run to another bell to escape the Nightmare Dimension. Now, additionally, you will also have to be close to the bell because when you are close to it, you will get a buff called Waking Resonance. This buff will actually allow you to do real damage to Caiatl, because without the buff, your DPS will basically become absolute trash. You can stun Caiatl 3 times, 1 time for each of the bells in the arena, before she leaves to go back to the normal dimension. When Caiatl goes back to the normal dimension, you will be transported back to the arena, where then you will have to rinse and repeat the mechanics once again. Now that we have gone over all the mechanics for this encounter, let's talk about tips and strategies. Titans, you can literally go around bonking everything to death in both the normal dimension and the nightmare dimension and be perfectly fine as long as you don't lose your throwing hammer. Warlocks, I recommend Devour in here, as I found it to be invaluable for survival. Hunters, you pretty much have free reign with your infinite invis, however without your invis you become a sitting duck, so play to your strengths and don't do anything too risky. Now for dealing with Caiatl and the Bell Keepers, here is my advice to you. Focus on the Bell Keepers near the bell Caiatl is running to. Kill them and then stun her and leave her there. Once you leave her there, go and kill the other Bell Keepers surrounding the other bells. You will lose out on part of a damage phase, but it is more worth it to lose out on a part of the damage phase than losing out on the entire thing. Additionally, if you need more time to kill the Bell Keepers, you can make Caiatl stomp, and you can bait this, which will give you a bit more additional time if you need it. Titans, you can pretty much disregard that for the most part if you are quick enough, because if you are quick enough with your throwing hammer, you can pretty much kill all of the Bell Keepers before Caiatl can even reach one of the bells. However, I do not recommend that as a solid strategy because it can sometimes go wrong. Now for DPSing against Caiatl, I would strongly once again recommend the Lament, as it will heal you, which will make tanking the sniper shots fired from the Scions much easier. Using Lament by itself, I personally was able to efficiently 3 to 5 phase Caiatl, which when you're running solo is very good. 3 phases was when everything went right, and 5 phases is when everything pretty much went wrong. So Lament is definitely a very strong and good pick. But that will bring us to the end of this guide. If you have any questions or advice, be sure to leave a comment below. My name's Super, Destiny Enthusiast, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye bye.